Wolf, but wrong. Every summer during high school, my two cousins and I, all girls around the same age, would go on these summer walks in the middle of the night. Yes, we are white girls. I live up in the boonies, and a few blocks length away is this old cemetery up past the church. We would always walk there and back, seeing if something creepy would happen. Yes, it sounds crazy, but we were teenagers and that's how we do stuff. Anyways, we were walking back from the cemetery, and we're not far from my house, when I decided to glance behind us. I had done it the entire time, and I am paranoid enough to worry if maybe some creeper from the neighboring houses was stalking us from past incidences. Well, I glanced back behind us. I saw something that is eternally burned into my memory, and because of what I saw, I will never go on a walk at night again. It looked like a wolf. I live up in northern Idaho in the mountains, so a wolf wandering around from Yellowstone isn't too far-fetched, but it wasn't. It was bigger, and the way it walked was wrong, almost like the way a full-grown man would walk on all fours, and it's linked across the road about 15 yards behind us, like it was silently hunting us. The worst part of it was its back, though. It was arched up high like a cat when it's afraid and is in a defensive position. In a way, it almost looked like something out of a Scooby-Doo cartoon, but realistic. As soon as I saw it, I looked back ahead and could only think that I was going insane. I was trying not to show that I was panicking because I didn't want my two cousins to start freaking out as well. And if it really was there, and it was hunting us, if we started to run, it would begin to chase. Well, the plan didn't last for too long because I had gotten really quiet in the middle of a conversation we were having. So one of my cousins asked me, "What's wrong?" And all I say is that I will tell them when we get back to the house. Then my other cousin quietly asked me, "You saw it too, didn't you?" That's when panic hit me full force because then I realized it wasn't my crazy imagination. "You saw it too?" I asked. And before she can answer, my other cousin starts hitting us with panic questions. What did you see?" She started to turn around to look, but both me and my cousin who saw whatever the hell it was told her not to look and keep walking. She started to say that she was going to run, but we both wouldn't let her because if we ran, it would know and it would run too. Somehow we made it to the house without dying, but as soon as we got to our room and were sitting on the bed together, my cousin who saw it began to ask me what it looked like. Both of our descriptions were exactly the same, a dog, but too big to be a dog, but not a wolf because it didn't look right. After that, we swore we would never go outside on our walks at night again, and to this day, I can't set a foot outside my driveway after the sun goes down. I don't ever want to see that again. Strange experience from 3+ years ago. I was in Hawaii vacationing for my birthday. I had a very strange dream one night there. In my dreams, I saw a plane, white in color, and distinctly being aware that it was a 777 even in my dream. The plane was circling in the sky almost as if a bird trying to avoid shots being fired at it. Shots were being fired at it from the ground. I remember a guy or guys with guns shooting at it. I was amongst those guys. As an observer of this entire incident, the view I had of the plane in my dream was from the ground looking up. Finally, the plane got hit, and I saw smoke billowing out of it, and it heading for the ground, and that was it. When I woke up next morning, went to my friend's room in our Airbnb, they asked me if I had read the bad news. I said, "What news?" And they told me that last night, Malaysian Airlines 17 had been shot down. I cross-checked. The plane was shot down around 3:20 a.m. Hawaii time, and it was a 777. However, it was not all white, as the case was in my dream. Only top half was white, and the bottom half was like a whitish gray color. I've never had any paranormal or metaphysical experiences in my life before or after this incident. I'm actually not even sure if this qualifies as strange enough to be filed under paranormal, but I've always found the coincidence between my dream and real-life events that very night very eerie. I think I saw Santa for real. I know. I know the title of this sounds crazy, and it sounds like I'm trying to troll the subreddit, honestly, but I promise you that my story is true and that at least 5 other people also saw the same thing. I beg you to please be the one place where this story isn't ridiculed or instantly disbelieved. This happened about 10 to 11 years ago, of course, because this is a Santa sighting. It was in December, either right before or right after Christmas. I was in North Carolina visiting my family for the holidays, so me and my family were at the movies watching Santa Claus or Santa Claus 2, the movies where Tim Allen turns into Santa. It's a small theater, and there are maybe 30 total people in the theater. As the movie ends and we start to leave, my parents and grandparents notice an old couple who are dressed up like Santa and Mrs. Claus. They go ahead of me and my sister and tell them to be in character. When we go up and say hi to them, I really don't remember the interaction, except that it was short and brief. Me and my sister are young and excited that we just met Santa. As we got into the car, we start driving away towards the house when I noticed a bright red light in the air. I'm a very bad judge of distance, so I couldn't tell you how high up it was, but it was definitely too low to be an aircraft. Also, there was no sound coming from the lights. I couldn't see too well behind the red light except for the outline of a sleigh. I want to say that I could make out the outline of the reindeer, but I think that it's a false memory. At this point, as a little kid who still believed in Santa Claus, I started yelling in the car and pointed out the window towards the red lights. My parents and grandparents all see the exact same thing I did. Then came the bells. Shortly after getting my parents' attention, someone opens up their window to get a better view instead of the foggy window. We actually heard bells like sleigh bells. Try to remember any movie with Santa and the sound that the sleigh makes when it's moving. Those bells. All the old people start staring at each other in disbelief over what was happening. We were staring at it for several minutes before it left out of sight, either from us driving away or from it leaving our sight. I still ask my parents and grandparents about what happened every year. I'm 19 years old, about to be 20, and there is no reason for them to be lying about the experience. They all swear that they saw Santa and refuse to tell anyone outside of us who were there because of how ridiculous it sounds. I try to tell this story to my friends, and all they do is make fun of me. All I know is that I might have actually talked to the real Santa Claus when I was a kid. As I said before, I'm 19, about to be 20, and I've been told that Santa isn't real, and that it's just our parents. Since that night, however, I have always held on to the experience and don't truly disbelieve in the existence of the Fat Man. A haunted house in Texas. I like to share a story about a house I visited with some friends years ago. I get the chills every time I tell this story. My buddy worked with a guy who we'll call Jim. Jim owned a house out in a small Texas town. This house was built in 1890 and was actually transplanted from another part of Texas. Jim is an alcoholic in his late 30s and lived in this house alone with his cat. We decided to go and have a party there with some friends and spend the night. We are all juniors in high school. There were 5 of us. A couple bottles of liquor, some pots, and some magic mushrooms. We arrive at the property and my friend tells us the house is haunted. Now I could simply glance at this house and your first impression would be, I don't want to go in there. It's got ghosts written all over it. It's very old. It's all crooked and look like it's gonna fall over any day. Imagine the house from Courage the Cowardly Dog. That's what it reminded me of. We walk in to be greeted by a possessed cat. It's hissing and growling and making the most awful noises. Jim kept jokingly telling the cat, "Kill her, kill." It would attack if anyone tried to pet it. There was something terribly wrong with this feline. Jim, already half drunk, gave us the tour. This house was small, 2 stories. We walk up a rickety staircase to the upstairs, which was really the attic, which had 6 or 7 very small empty rooms. None of us wanted to be up there for very long. We all got a bad feeling. For the remainder of the visit, none of us went back up there. My buddy peeled back part of the wallpaper up there to reveal a very old handprint of a child, which appeared to be in blood. We came back downstairs to get the party started. We all ate 1 or 2 grams of the mushrooms and hung out in the kitchen talking and whatnot. We were listening to the radio and had it on the rock station. Eventually, we decided to go watch Pink Floyd The Wall in the living room. Jim went to his room shortly after starting the movie and passed out. He was wasted drunk. Now halfway through the movie, the five of us are starting to feel the shrooms kick in. Mind you, this is the climax of the film, where the main character is going insane, so we are a bit uncomfortable. All of a sudden, Jim opens his door abruptly, aiming an AK-47 at us, screaming, "Who the fuck are you? Get out of my house!" My buddy calms him down and reminds him that he invited us in here. Suddenly, Jim remembers us and just walks back in his room and goes back to sleep. We are tripping the fuck out at this point. Eventually, we calm down and finish the movie. Everyone else is passed out in the other room. My two friends and I stayed up in the living room. We were tripping pretty fucking hard, smoking bowls and laughing our asses off. It's about 3 a.m. and we decide to try and pass out. As we are trying to sleep, we hear the shower upstairs turn on. Both of us are like, what the fuck? No one is up there. We got real quiet. We then heard the radio in the kitchen turn on by itself to an old country station. It was very staticky. We look at each other petrified. We are freaked the fuck out. We heard footsteps and all kinds of weird shit that night. Yes, we were tripping on shrooms, but these were not hallucinations. We all heard it. We leave at 7 a.m. and never came back to that house. After that night, I've never doubted the existence of ghosts. Brief encounter in Atlanta. Hey everyone, I'm super new to Reddit, and this sub was my first destination because I love the paranormal. Anyways, I had a brief encounter with a spirit that spanned about 3 weeks. A little bit of background information. I'm originally from Arizona, but I visit Atlanta, GA during the summer to visit my mom. I would say I'm knowledgeable about spirits, as I come from a highly superstitious Buddhist Vietnamese family, where my great-grandfather was the headmaster monk. If you didn't know, ghosts and spirits are ingrained in our culture, regardless of age, social class, and religion. The first instance was back in summer 2015. I was in my sister's room playing card games. She was complaining of having difficulty sleeping, because she is convinced that her room was haunted. I could see why she would think that, because her closet makes a lot of creaking noises, and the inside of it has a crude drawing of a raven from the previous owners. I assured her that her room is not haunted, and the raven is too horror movie cliché to actually mean anything. While we were playing, the turny thing that opens and widens the blinds of the window starts swaying vigorously. My sister looks over at me like, see? I told her it's just a breeze. And then the swaying stops abruptly. My mouth is open and I'm on alert now, so I cautiously approach the window and check if the windows were open, or if there was any cracks, and there were not. I sprint out of the room and so does she. We sit in the hallway peering into the room through the sides of the door and the swaying starts again. I close the door and I tell her, yeah, you should probably sleep with mom tonight. And she does for the whole following week, as she avoids her room as much as possible. The second encounter happened a week and a half later after the first. I was playing hide and seek with my other younger sister, who was 5 years old at the time. After a few rounds, she decides to run into my room to hide. She was hiding under covers as a very obvious bump, and I stand in the hallway and tell her that I found her and that she could do better. She crawls out from under the covers and she yells, "You found me!" The door then just slams in front of my face and I startle back. My sister screams and I hear her run to the door and try to force it open, but it won't open. I know it can't lock properly because it's busted, so I tell her to stand clear as I try to force the door open. Normally the door would bust right open, but it wouldn't budge. My sister is crying by now, and I turn around to run and get my mom, but then I hear the door creak open, and I see my sister sitting a good distance away from it, crying. By this point, I'm convinced that there's a spirit in the house. I spent that night in my room using Buddhist prayers my parents taught me, in an attempt to pacify the spirit. To be honest, I have no idea if it worked, but after that, there were no more incidences for the rest of the summer. My sister claims there was a third incident, because she heard the younger sister's toys making noises and moving around in the kitchen when she went to the restroom late at night. But being confident in my basic minimal work exorcism, I tell her that I pacify the spirits, and that toys usually do that on their own, I think. Anyways, thanks to everyone who read this, and hope you enjoyed it. The stairwell. I'm new to this thread, so I'll do my best to tell my experience. This happened around July of 2016. I live in a rural town in Michigan, where the weather can't make up its mind. On this night, it was a fairly warm outside, so I decided to open up the windows in my living room to cool down the house. I had one light on in my living room and was watching some TV alone, since my parents had already went to bed. To the right of my armchair was a wooden railing with spindles that was about 6 feet away. From my angle, the stairs were hidden by the floor of the living room, and I can only really see the top 2 stairs if I were to turn to my right. There was an open window letting in a breeze to my left. As I watched TV, I could hear the sounds of someone walking quickly up the stairs. The sound was so clear even through the chatter of the TV and the crickets outside. The creak of the steps ended, and I half expected to see someone come into view. I didn't move at all. I didn't want to get up or turn off the TV, for fear that whomever or whatever was on the stairs would know I had heard of them. My eyes were glued to the staircase when I heard the creaking start again. But this time, it was receding back into my basement. My heart was racing and I was freaking out because I didn't know what to do. I looked over to see that I had my phone next to me, and I felt so relieved. I slowly reached out my arm and grabbed my phone. As I did this, my dad walked in the kitchen, which was in the next room. He is a very loud person, so I decided that I should be okay to get up and move, since he was already making so much noise. I start whisper yelling to him that what had just happened, and he said that he would check it out, and check out the basement to make sure no one is down there. I grabbed a wooden baseball bat from the closet, and made my dad go in the basement first. Our basement is fully furnished, so it's not even that creepy. We made sure to check every single nook and cranny, but we couldn't find anything. This made me feel a little bit better, knowing that nothing was down there. But I still wasn't looking forward to sleeping down there. I was 16 and my brother had just moved out of the house. Both our rooms were in the basement, and it was nice to know that someone was in the next room. But now it can get a bit spooky, now just me. I went back upstairs after searching to tell my mom everything. She has had a few unexplained happenings from her childhood, so when I tell her, she believes me. My dad, on the other hand, is very skeptical, and told me that I was probably just hearing things. Almost a year has passed and nothing has happened until this morning. I was sitting in the same chair when my mom walked up to the stairs, to the landing, turned to me and said, "Whoa, I think something just grabbed my hand." I shrugged, not really knowing what to do. I believed her, obviously, but I didn't say anything. She was doing some laundry at the time and had to go back down there. On the way down, I could hear her voice again. "It's touching my hand again." She came back up after putting the rest of the clothes in the washer, and I walked over to the landing to see for myself. I wasn't actually expecting to feel anything, but sure enough, the best way I could describe it is how it feels when a small child tugs on your hand. I felt something tug on my left pinky and ring finger. Has anyone else had an experience similar to this one? Grabbed and spoken to while out of town. On February 17th, I traveled to Olympia, Washington for business, and stayed 2 nights in the DoubleTree Hilton there. On the very first night, I had an experience that I cannot shake. Due to rental car traffic and weather, I didn't end up arriving at my hotel until about 9 p.m. at night, and after only a trail mix packet to eat since breakfast, I ended up going to the hotel bar and having dinner and 1 beer. I ordered my food and sipped my beer, while I texted my wife to let her know I had gotten through the weather safely to my hotel. Around 10 p.m., I went to my room and turned on the TV for some background noise when I unpacked. Rambo 3 was on while I changed into some sleepwear. I ended up turning the lights out around 10:45 and dozing off quickly after a long day of travel. The next thing I knew, I opened my eyes and was facing the hotel alarm clock on the nightstand, which read 3:06 a.m. I had been lying on my right side near the edge of the bed and was at the corner of my eye to my left. I saw something or someone move at the foot of the bed. I was extremely startled and turned my head to look directly at it. In nearly an instant, this tall, dark figure was next to me, leaning over me. It was difficult to estimate how tall it was because I was lying down. in an older woman's voice. I heard it say 3 letters very clearly. O-B-S. And almost immediately after stating these letters the first time, I felt a firm grip on my left arm, and it repeated the letters louder and more sternly, with a bit of a pause between them. O-B-S. At this point, I threw the covers off and back-skirted to the opposite side of the bed to turn a lamp on. Once the lights were on, I didn't see anyone in my room. I looked around the room to see if there was any evidence of someone else being there, but came up empty-handed. I also looked at my arm where I'd been grabbed and didn't see anything. Needless to say, though, I didn't sleep again that night. I keep going over this experience in my head, and can't help but wonder if there was a purpose for it. The tone in which the letters were spoken were almost disciplinarian. The voice sounded agitated or frustrated, like I was a child who had been misinterpreting something my mother was saying. The letters themselves don't mean anything to me. I've experienced a number of things in my life that I consider paranormal, though it has been a couple of years, but this is the first time I have been touched. It was quite unsettling. I know posting something like this on a public forum is to invite public scrutiny, but I'm hoping someone else who reads this can at least identify with what happened here, and or may be able to shed some light on the potential meaning behind such an encounter. The darkness in the California northern coast mountains. One summer a few years ago, I was living and working on a farm in Northern California. I lived on a property with maybe 15 to 20 other people, and at the time of this incident, I stayed in a rustic bunkhouse with 7 others. It was truly a gorgeous piece of property up in the mountains, near the top of a hill itself. One night, after dinner and a long day of work, I had walked out to the highest part of the property, with no tree covering, with a few other people. It was the spot that had the best view of the night sky. We go out there often on breaks or at night especially, because being out in such a rural spot with no light pollution, the stars were so bright and abundant, you felt like you were in a snow globe or a planetarium. Anyways, on this particular night, there was a meteor shower. So, about 5 of us were out watching the show. Everyone went back to the main part of the property over the course of the next hour, until it was just me and one other guy, a kind older man who was security for the farm. I said I was going to head back, and he offered to walk with me, because it was dark and well, he's security, so that's what he does, I guess. So we walked down the hill making small talk about the sky, and take a curved path along the side of the hill, and a patch of aspen trees. It's dark, sure, but I walked this path many times. By this point, I've been working on the farm for a month, and knew the property and the people very well. I'd enjoy the meteor shower, and was planning to chat with friends, then head to bed. But as we were walking along this path, I was suddenly overcome with this powerful, strange feeling of dread. It bubbled up in me. I felt like every hair on my body was standing up. My breathing slowed and was shallow. I didn't know what, but I had this undeniable sense that something was coming. I wanted to say something to the man I was walking with, but I felt I couldn't speak. Everything in me told me to run, to just start running, but I didn't want to seem like I was totally insane to this dude. There was no reason for my fear, though. This feeling built over the course of about a minute. As we're walking along this path, the sense of dread is strengthening, and oddly, I feel like I'm preparing for something. It's confusing, and I start frantically looking for explanations. Did I sense an animal? Is this man going to attack me? I start mentally reviewing self-defense techniques. If I screamed, everyone on the farm would hear me, so it wouldn't make sense for him to attack me here. We weren't far from the bunkhouse and the people were milling around, so this fear was there, but I was fighting it, telling myself it had no reason or purpose to be there. Still, it only seemed to get worse. I was on edge. My adrenaline was through the roof. As I'm becoming more engulfed by this fear, quite suddenly a calm but skeptical voice in the back of my head says, "It's me. I hope you're ready for this." My immediate internal reaction is confusion, but as I'm thinking, that's an odd thing to think, I'm suddenly attacked by something. I don't know how to explain or describe it. It sounds insane and silly, but I truly felt like something was battling me internally, like my soul or spirit or something, like something external had entered my internal consciousness or spirit and was trying to overpower it. I felt overwhelmed by fear and this powerful internal fight with darkness. I couldn't think or do anything but continue to put one foot in front of the other, though at this point I was barely aware of that, the man walking with me, or anything except this inexplicable fight going on inside of me. The strange thing is, as soon as this thing hits and this battle begins, that same voice in my head from earlier that said, "I hope you're ready for this," starts repeating over and over again, "I am pure light, I am pure light, I am pure light." It feels like I'm shouting it internally, shouting through a darkness I don't understand but is suffocating me. A minute later, what felt like an eternity, the feeling just went away. Evaporated. Completely gone. I felt like I could see, I could breathe, I could think. I was shaken, but I wasn't scared anymore. The man with me did not notice my brief silence, and we rounded the final corner of the path. Now only 100 yards or so from the bunkhouse, I thanked him for walking with me and escaped right up to my bunk. I lay there for a while, completely thrown and shaken, and at a total loss to explain what had just happened. I've struggled with anxiety most of my life, and I've had my fair share of panic attacks. This was not like any panic attack I've ever experienced, though I know that those too often come out of nowhere with no real trigger, but those panic attacks never came with a feeling of wanting to run, never came with voices, my own, warning me of what was to come. They didn't come with that darkness I still can't explain. The weirdest part to me, though, is that I had no idea where the phrase "I am pure light" had come from. I don't know why I thought it, why I repeated it. I Googled it while laying in my bunk, using precious data and extremely slow connection. All the results were religious in nature. One was a prayer, one mentioned the pure white light of Jesus. It made my blood run cold. I'm not a religious person. I hadn't attended church in ages. I certainly didn't know of such prayers, did not have a store of them memorized in the back of my mind to pluck out at such times. So where had this come from? So instantaneously, without any thought for myself? I hesitated to tell anyone about it, but some noticed I was still shaken the next day. I spoke privately with a woman there, Allie, around my age, because I felt somehow that she would understand. I started to tell her the story about how something happened to me after the meteor shower when I was walking back. I don't know how to explain it. I started. I felt attacked. She stopped me there, looking up from what she was doing, and asked me where I was specifically, when it happened. "Along the bend over there," I pointed. "Around the curve of the hill, just past the aspen trees." I remember her pursed her lips and kind of grimaced. "Say no more," she said. I walk that way every night to get to my tent, and every night I recite prayers until I get there. This was interesting to me because I knew Allie had been raised Muslim, but was not practicing or not a believer. "I know it's crazy," she went on. "I don't know if it helps, but I feel like it does. There's something dark there. I don't think we should talk about it." I agreed, and we went back to our work. We did end up talking about it again, me giving her the story in bits and pieces, but mostly I just gave her knowing glances and supportive smiles when she left for the tent, each night. I left the farm soon afterwards. A few other non-paranormal things happened that made me realize I was taunting fate by continuing to be there. I don't tell most people this story. It's been a few years now, and despite the time and distance, I'm still very firm about believing what happened to me was real and not normal. I've never had another experience like it, and I've been in frightening situations since then. For the record, I was not drunk or using any other substances. For anyone curious, a couple things I learned that may or may not have any meaning or influence. Those mountains, like many places in the US, were the cities of acts of war and genocide against the native people that once lived there. And the path that I was on was along a kind of natural kind of crease in the mountain that was an animal trail and crossing. Few animals used it at this time due to human presence, but it's clear that that's what it was. I only share after repeated requests to do so. knowing full well how many people will think that this is just a panic attack of some variety. But I am also hopeful that one day, I'll find others that have experienced something similar, so I can feel less crazy and less alone in all this.